and that is there will be some metaphysics in this talk. I understand that this may not be welcome in this particular building, but it so happens that I like metaphysics, and so I'll have to deal with it. All right. My topic today basically is the metaphysics of physical quantities, which is something that I work on in general, and so I have lots of things to say about. But today I want to focus on an issue that has gotten a lot of attention recently in the literature, which is absolutism versus comparativism about quantities. And some people sort of really got very involved in that in the metaphysics literature. Today I kind of want to take it over to look at some physical case studies and see how it plays out there. So in particular, my questions are going to be whether measurement theory can help us clarify all the issues, because I actually think, unsurprisingly perhaps, metaphysicians have not been terribly clear about what they're actually worried about. Then I want to look at whether case studies from physics can help us decide whether we should be absolutists or comparativists. I'm actually going to have a fairly disappointing conclusion on that, but it might nonetheless be interesting to see how it plays out. And a bonus would of course be, I think, if those ideas can shed light on the case studies themselves. I'm going to be tentative about that one as well. The basic idea is that both absolutism and comparativism are these interesting positions in the metaphysics of quantities, and so the debate between them is interesting, but as far as it stands, it's not very clear. Today I'm going to take a certain angle on what that debate might be. I'm going to interpret absolutists as people who like extensive measurement structures and would prefer to use extensive measurement structures only in physics, whereas people who prefer comparativism are people who like difference measurement structures. Now we'll explain what those two types of measurement structures are and how that might play into certain types of debates. And finally, I said, looking at these case studies from physics, we'll find that they do provide sources for constructing arguments, but actually it's far less decisive than some people have made it out to be in the literature so far. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about today. Here's the outline. I will start by clarifying this debate between absolutists and comparativists. I will then offer a kind of brief dip into measurement theory to look at whether we can clarify that debate, and then look at certain disputes over physical quantities, cases where there was an issue over whether or not certain quantities should be accepted as physical, and look at whether or not these types of issues help us understand those better. Okay. Now, what's the current debate? Now, this is the metaphysical part, so I apologize again for it. As far as metaphysicians are concerned, there's two types of quantitative facts we might look at. One is the group of facts that are called the A facts. And they're basically facts of the form x has a mass of 1 kilogram, or the distance from x to y is 6 kilometers. And these are contrasted in the literature with C facts, at least I call them C facts, of the form x is 4 times as fast as y, or x is 6 times as far away from y as y is from z. Now, typically, when I present it like this, there are two immediate responses. I predict in this group, this will be the more common response. The common response is to say, well, A facts are just C facts in disguise. Right? There's not actually two different types of facts. There's one type of facts, C fact, and you can see it as follows. A C fact basically contains a number and a unit, and units are essentially standards of comparison. That's what units are. So A facts are really implicit comparisons. Right? When I say x has a mass of 6 kilograms, what I'm really doing is I'm comparing whatever object I'm looking at to the standard kilogram, and because the standard kilogram is assigned 1 kilogram by convention, I'm going to get a nice comparison that I can sort of drop in the way I express the sentence. But really, that just means A facts are C facts, because C facts are types of comparisons. That's the typical response I get from philosophers of science. From metaphysicians, I get the opposite response. From metaphysicians, I get the response that A facts are obviously more fundamental than C facts. Why would you think that? Well, C facts hold the virtue of intrinsic or inherent properties of objects. Right, so typically they will point to examples and say, well look, surely whatever the ratio between the mass of my laptop and this mug is going to depend on the mass of the laptop and the mass of the mug. And so those two look like intrinsic properties, and so that relationship holds in virtue of these intrinsic properties and should be treated as an internal relation. But internal relations are secondary to the intrinsic properties on which they depend. If that sounds like gibberish to you, that again is how metaphysicians try to explain why they think A facts are more fundamental. Now, of course, they concede that as stated, an A fact looks like a comparison because it invokes units and numbers, but they think that's just our way of picking out the A facts. That's just sort of how we happen to refer to them, but there's nothing deep or interesting about that. To sort of insist that there's something deep or interesting about this is in a sense to confuse metaphysics with semantics or epistemology. Okay, so those are sort of standard reactions people have to this kind of debate. I have sympathies to the first one, I should say, but I think we need to give the friends of A facts some credit and try to do a bit better than just insist on the basis of the surface structure of the fact that these are just C facts.
Did you just say the opposite in a different crowd, though? You butter us up with the, I agree with you guys on the C facts.
So I can assure you, I've given a similar, not this talk, but a similar talk on a similar topic 2 weeks ago in Geneva, to a crowd of, or not in Geneva, but to a crowd of people, many of whom were in Geneva. They were all metaphysicians. And I had people after my talk stand up and essentially give me this very argument, despite all my efforts to convince them of this. So, you know, I can try hard, but that's what happens. Now let me say how Dasgupta frames the debate, who's really responsible for bringing this up in a, I think, ultimately 2013 paper. He wants to say, well, we need to understand which of these two types of facts is more fundamental. The comparativists are the people who say the C facts are fundamental. The absolutists are the ones who say that A facts are fundamental. Now, I want to say, hang on a second. We need to understand how A facts and C facts are distinct from one another, right? Because that was sort of my comparativist impulse earlier that says, aren't the A facts just C facts in disguise? So, minimally, I think the potential absolutist has, or even the person who just thinks that there's a debate to be had, has the burden of saying what they think is different between the two types of facts. And here it gets a bit interesting because the metaphysicians might go in for two possible explanations, and actually I think so far there's a huge ambivalence in the debate, which of these two you really want to go for. One is to say, okay, the constituents of these two types of facts are just different. Right? In one case, there's intrinsic or monadic properties. I'm not going to worry for the purposes today how exactly to characterize those. So in the case of A facts, you have these monadic or intrinsic properties. In the case of C facts, you have relations. Those are distinct metaphysical entities. If those facts have different constituents, they're distinct facts. End of story. On the other hand, some of the arguments and some of the debates people are having point to a slightly different distinction, and that's a distinction in terms of determinacy, where they seem to suggest that A facts are in a sense more determinate than C facts. And we're going to see in a moment how that might play out. And for the rest of the talk, I'm mostly going to be concerned with the determinacy question. So there's something to look forward to. The metaphysics part is going to end. I won't worry about this too much more. Let me say something about the determinacy part. Why would you think that A facts are more determinate than C facts? Well, you might think of situations like the following. The relation x is twice as massive as y is true both for the case where x is a mass of 4 kilograms and y has a mass of 2 kilograms, and for the case where x is a mass of 50 kilograms and y has a mass of 25 kilograms. Now, there are various other ways in which you might distinguish these two cases, but just prima facie, it seems that for any C facts, there's sort of many different ways in which that C fact would be true, and for any of these A facts here, there's only one way in which it can be true. And a lot of the intuitive pull for absolutism, I think, comes from considerations like these. I think they're in a sense confused, but it's worth noting where the intuition comes from before trying to explain why it exists. So if you're going to resolve this kind of ambivalence, you might say, let's look at the degree of determinacy, and let's ask ourselves, well, first of all, how does it show up in our theories, but then also how much determinacy do we need? And that's what I'm going to focus on for the rest of the talk. Now, the way I want to phrase this, I want to say what we need to ask when we ask about the determinacy question is, how determinate are the phenomena represented by quantitative claims? That if you make a quantitative claim and we think there's something in the phenomena or in the world that makes it true, how much determinacy do you need in the world for that to be the case? And to understand that, I think we need to look at the numerical representations, which is what our quantitative claims are, the numerical representations of the world. And we need to understand what sorts of empirical and theoretical reasons we have for accepting particular types of numerical representations. So that, I think, is going to help us solve this branch of this kind of issue. Again, I'm not going to worry about the other branch today. Good. Now that's good because that will help us use the measurement theory. Why? Because measurement theory, of course, has a lot of apparatus to talk about determinacy and numerical representation. In particular, it's very well understood in measurement theory that you have different levels of uniqueness in your numerical representation for various kinds of phenomena or measurement structures. In general, the more determinate the measurement structure is, the more unique are the numerical representations. So I can use an interesting, informative, meaningful numerical representation if the thing that I'm representing actually has a lot of structure. If it doesn't, then that's going to be less informative. And the way that at least the representational measurement theory characterizes levels of uniqueness is by looking at the mapping from the empirical structure to the numerical structure, to look at what sorts of transformations are permissible for such a mapping. So that's how measurement theory treats questions that look suddenly very much in the vicinity of what we're looking for when we were asking about the determinacy of our numerical representations. Now, today we're going to be interested in two types of measurement structures. On the one hand, extensive structures, and on the other hand, different structures. Extensive structures, I'm pretty sure, are very, very familiar, because I think pretty much any paper on measurement theory tends to talk about these first. And they start from a set of elements. It could be the set of chairs in this room. An ordering relation among these elements, and a concatenation operation of some sort, typically thought of as combining elements in a kind of additive way, although that's not actually necessary. Different structures, although also well understood, I think less frequently explained, they start out from sets of pairs of elements. Okay, so that's good. Here you have sets of elements. Again, I think representationalists think of them as individual objects. It's going to be fine for today. Those are sets of pairs of elements, typically thought of as the endpoints of intervals. You look at an ordering relation among the intervals between the elements. So no longer an ordering relation directly between the elements, but between the intervals between the elements. And instead of the concatenation operation, you get a kind of straightness or of a single dimension condition. So the thought here is you want your differences to lie on a single dimension. Yeah.
Is that not transitivity?
It is a form of transitivity. The important part is it only works for a single dimension in this case, right? So in particular, you're looking at intervals. It's a kind of addition condition, because you're looking at intervals and you're thinking, okay, if you have an interval A, B, and you have an interval BC. You want them all to lie on a single line, basically. Now, there are more complicated cases that are considered measurement theory, we have multidimensional ones. They get more complicated, not relevant for me today. But that's going to be an important condition for the things I say next to work out, because otherwise they don't work out if they're not on a single dimension. Or if that dimension is funky, right? I mean, this could be a single dimension, but that's clearly weird in some way. And again, you would have to say something about what's going on with those intervals that explains what's going on here. So that's the thought. Different structures are quite different from extensive structures in terms of what they're consisting of. Now, both of these can be given numerical representations, and that's, again, all very well understood. So for extensive structures, you have two conditions that you want to have fulfilled by your representation. You want it to be the case that if in the ordering relation A comes before B in some sense, then, or A comes after B, then your numerical values should also exhibit that ordering. And you want it to be the case that if the concatenation relation holds, then you can map that by addition.
So sorry, just to be clear, what is the mathematical structure in the domain and the image of phi there?
Okay, good. Either the reals or the positive reals.
In the domain.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
And the image?
so you're starting from your measurement structure.
Okay, which are these represented by reals or positive reals, you're saying?
No. The measurement structure is empirical stuff.
Okay, I see, sorry.
That's empirical stuff.
And you're assigning numbers to it?
And I'm assigning numbers to it.
I got it.
And those numbers are either the reals or the positive.
I see, okay. Alright, so it has the ordering and the addition structure from the reals.
Yeah.
And you're not worrying about multiplication at all, just addition.
It actually doesn't matter so much. So typically, for many cases, you will use addition, but it turns out the axioms are so general you could use multiplication as well. So that's one of the things that I think the representational theory is really good at. So it shows us that the focus on addition was misplaced in the early measurement theory literature. On the other hand, it's still the case that these extensive structures are quite special in terms of how strong the representation is that you're getting, which is not something that is sort of guaranteed in the different structure case. In the different structure case, you have a bunch of different structures. One type are absolute different structures, where you're comparing basically the magnitude of intervals. That's what you're looking for here. And those are quite general. The type of scale you're getting from that is quite weak by comparison.
Do you mean to have a circle between A and B on the left and not on the right? So you have, looks like you have some sort of product AB under different structures, and then a different sort of product A circle B under extensive structures. So they're both coming from a measurement structure with some binary operation on it.
This should not be. This is not a product.
Oh, sorry.
These are intervals.
Oh, okay.
It's the interval AB and the
Okay.
interval CD.
Thanks. Yeah.
Sorry, so what's phi of A? Why is it not phi of AB as a, what are you assigning
These
to
are the
A?
endpoints. These are the endpoints of the interval.
So you're
But
saying
you-
So think of them. So these are numbers assigned to the endpoints of intervals.
Okay, so phi of A does have an absolute value. So that,
Yeah. So this in the absolute structure, you assign it. You assign the difference between A and B an absolute value. Now, absolute in the following sense: you're disregarding signs. You're disregarding the direction of the interval. That's the sense in which it's absolute.
well, so you always have a definite assignment from the endpoints to the real numbers, but then it seems to me you're defining what it means for one interval AB to be larger than an interval CD in terms of the absolute value of the difference between those two assignments. Is that a fair way to?
Is that again?
That we really are assigning, we have an assignment from endpoints to real numbers by phi, that's what phi does. But that then we're defining, in fact that first line is defining what it means to say that one interval is longer than another, that is AB is greater than or equal to CD.
It
And what
specifies a condition on the assignment. You want to have an assignment such that your intervals, such that the assignment to the endpoint matches the ordering of the intervals.
Okay, I see. Sorry. So you already know somehow what it means for an interval to be bigger than another interval. You have like, you're just looking at it and knowing or whatever.
If you think about it epistemically, this is the stuff you start out knowing.
Okay, and now you're asking which phis are available to me, and they're the ones that satisfy that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And similar, so that's a general strategy for all three of these. The interesting one, interestingly different from the other two, is the one for positive difference structures, where you're only looking at intervals in one direction. Right, so crucially here, so here we ignore the direction of the intervals. Here we ignore the direction of the intervals. We're just interested in how big are the intervals. Here we have intervals of both directions. And here we say we're only looking at intervals that are basically going in one direction. And we're going to pick the positive one here, but that's actually equivalent arguments to the negative ones.
Okay, so I'd be very excited just to be a little clear then. So, then I think I understand the interval thing more clearly than the other thing, because I don't really understand the binary structure. So the A circle B, and that's not obviously what that represents.
Oh, well, it depends. So what that represents will depend on the particular structure in question.
Well, like an example, just so I can.
Here's an example. It might mean physical concatenation in the same pan of a beam balance. Okay. So I take two objects, put them on the same side. That's a way of concatenating their masses. That's going to be reflected in, or that's going to be representable by a function that takes it into the real numbers that will in fact respect addition. So that's a thought. I'm sort of shying away from the particular examples in part because I think one problem with representational measurement theory is that a lot of people have looked at those examples and thought, okay, you're just operationalist, right? You're just interpreting measurement in these very operationalist terms, and you just always need to specify the operation, and that's what it means to measure something. I don't think that's quite right. I think that they're specifying these very abstract structures. And they say, if you can show that an empirical phenomenon has that structure where they give axioms, I didn't give the axioms, then you get to represent it in this way. And that's cool. A lot of people were kind of upset about it because they thought, well, the hard part is showing that a particular empirical phenomenon satisfies the mathematical structure in question, or satisfies the conditions, satisfies the axioms for extensive structures, or satisfies the axioms for different structures. Now that's true, that's the hard part. But that's not really what measurement theory is about.
Okay. So people do offer different, so the reason you haven't defined axioms, I would want to know typically if things like A circle A goes to A is a fact. You're actually not axiomatizing the binary operation at all, you're just saying, well, how do people, some binary operation, how would people define it?
So in the extensive structures, you would specify certainly what the axioms are. And for extensive structures, typically it's going to be something like addition, but not always. So
it just depends on what they're doing.
It depends a bit on the application of it.
Okay, thanks. Super.
Yeah, it's always, I'm always struggling to think about how much information should put on the slides. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Okay, so those are the two types of measurement structures I'm going to be interested in. Because, puzzlingly, if you look at just the way that metaphysicians did A facts and C facts, it turns out that the numerical representations would seem to be the same, because both of those look like ratios. Right? That was, I think, the impulse that led us to say, but A facts are just C facts. And the only difference seems to be that the A fact specified a unit, the C fact gave the unit-free representation. So it was very unclear what the difference was supposed to be, with the one caveat that some comparativists, in particular Hartree Field, explicitly talk only about different structures. Now I think if you start from that, then it's really unclear what this argument is about. So I want to offer a bit of an interpretation here of what's going on. I think we need to keep in mind, first of all, that there are different ways in which a ratio representation can arise. That's what I've talked about here. In some cases, in particular when you have positive difference structures, you can get to representations that have a ratio scale strength, which is nice because those are the representations that you get over here. But that's not true for all difference structures. That's only true if you have a positive difference structure and you map it to the positive fields. So that's one reason why you might think that there's a difference. The other difference is that you might think even things that look like ratio representations might be given different interpretations depending on what we think physically about the quantities. So that's where we actually need to look at physics and understand what are we trying to represent when we use those scales. And in particular, I think there's a very interesting question of what it means for a quantity to have a zero value in those contexts. Okay. Hopefully that will become clear in a moment. I'll try to do pictures and see whether that helps. So the comparativist picture on this sort of angle that I'm taking on what this debate is about would be somebody who thinks basically what we want are different structures. Okay? We like this idea of there just being intervals that we measure or compare, and we try to construct most of the representations we get from structures of this type. So you get equal intervals in a single dimension. You get distances on that dimension by comparing the intervals to each other. And distances are a particular type of difference structure that admits of ratio scale representations because there's a positive difference structure if you go in one direction only. The absolutist, by contrast, I think has a very different picture of what quantities are. The absolutist thinks of a quantity as something that's kind of a directed, varying dimension or determinable, with the idea that there's an increase in quantity that literally means there's more of a given quantity where that quantity has a higher value. So there's more mass as you go to higher mass scales, as you walk along the mass scale. And the 0 point actually indicates the absence of the quantity. It's not an implausible picture, but I think that's sort of the background picture for those two approaches. And with those two background pictures in the background, you might think, okay, we can use measurement theory perhaps to help out precisely what the comparativists and the absolutists are arguing about. And I'm suggesting if this is your background picture, different structures are going to be a good bet. If that's your picture over there, then I think you're better off with a kind of extensive measurement structure. Is that clear, or is that totally deep? So I'm going to look at different kinds of comparativist-friendly quantities, and we can mention certain types of comparativist-friendly quantities. One is the absolute difference structure. We have sort of no directions at first, just regardless of direction. Algebraic difference structures where you have intervals going in both directions, and positive difference structures where you have intervals only going in one direction. Keep those images in your mind. That might help you to sort of think through some of the cases I'm looking at. So how might these cases help us, or what cases am I going to look at? Well, the thought is, what we might be looking for here is help on the determinacy question. Right? If absolutists and comparativists really disagree about how determinate they think our representations are, then surely physics can help us to decide what sort of level of determinacy we need for our theories. And if physics gives us an answer to that question, then that should settle, at least for the determinacy branch of the absolutism and comparativism debate, where you should fall. Or so goes the thought. Now, the strategy for putting this question to work, I think, is look at cases where there have been questions about the meaningfulness of numerical representations. And actually some in the history of physics where people have thought, well, here's something that shows up in the mathematics of my theory, and I'm not sure whether I should think of that as meaningful And meaningful is the term that sort of is used in that literature. I'm not sure I find it most helpful, but that's the term used. And for those cases, we can try to assess where the comparativists and absolutists differ in the attribution to determinacy and whether or not physics can sort of decide for these cases, should you be an absolutist or a comparativist. So that was at least the optimistic hope I had. I'm now much less optimistic about it. Okay. Here are two argumentative strategies, again found to some extent in the literature. This one found in the metaphysics literature, this one I think to some extent found in the physics literature. And it goes like this. The comparativist says, well look, absolute values of quantities are observationally unnecessary. And this is a key part of Dasgupta's paper where he tried to make this case. That means they should be interpreted as surplus structure, right, in the sense of this is something that shows up mathematically when you write this down, but you don't really need it to represent the physics. So for sort of broad Leo-Chemian reasons, we should not accept absolute quantity values, and accordingly we should not be absolutist about quantities. The absolutist might respond by saying, actually, absolute values might not make an immediate empirical difference, but they might make a difference indirectly. Again, there are cases where this seems to be the argument. Even where the empirical differences are not presently known, they might become known in the future. And we should be, accordingly, very, very careful about accepting this kind of very positivistic empiricist premise that seems to be hidden in this argument over here. Right? This idea that absolute quantity values are observationally not necessary, that means we should get rid of them.
Do you mind being? So are you taking observationally not necessary there to mean, or not, so to mean something positivist? Because obviously there's lots of arguments along these lines where one isn't being a positivist, one's talking about gauge principles and certain ways someone's worrying about things that don't really. You're thinking of a more blunt argument on the part of the...
Yes. Well,
okay, right.
This is the blunt argument. I think we'll see when we look at the cases both why this might not be the right argument, but also why it might be tricky to construct the other argument, hopefully. Okay. Now, if this is sort of in the background as the argumentative strategy, then you might think that two cases, I mean there's several cases, but these are two cases that you might think, they should surely speak in favour of comparativism. With Maxwell's arguments against the electric potential, and Einstein's argument against absolute simultaneity. Now, this argument was the one that Dasgupta actually feels in his paper, in an, I think, terrible way. But I think the other one would actually make a much more plausible case for the argumentative strategy that he uses. And you might think the commonality of these cases is there's mathematical surplus structure. I'm going to run through those cases in a moment. Over here, on the other hand, you might say, no, actually, if your absolutist has the kind of argumentative strategy I suggested, then my first appeal to the rotating bucket thought experiment. That would be a classic case of thinking we have theoretical reasons for thinking there's more structure than we can observationally distinguish. I'm not going to talk about this one today. And you might think of the element of Bohm effect as a clear example of something where we thought something didn't make a difference, but actually we can find an effect where it seems it does make a difference. And so the commonality in those two cases seems to be maybe we have theoretical reasons for retaining certain amounts of surplus structure in our theory, even though perhaps at the time, or perhaps in general, we don't have empirical, sort of positivistic observational reasons for hanging on to it. Okay, so those are the cases I want to look at again, bracketing the rotating bucket for time reasons. Here's Maxwell on potentials. Famously in contrast to fields, he wants to say the electric potential, which is the analog of temperature in this analogy that he's drawing on, is a mere scientific concept. We have no reason to regard it as denoting the physical state. In particular, what sort of reason might you have? Well, if a number of bodies are placed within a hollow metallic vessel, which completely surrounds them, we may charge the outer surface of the vessel and discharge it as we please without producing any physical effect whatever on the bodies within. But we know that the electric potential of the enclosed bodies rises and falls with that of the vessel. Why do we know it? Well, because if we attach a conductor, we'll actually see an effect. So he thinks we've done this experiment, not, I guess, in a spectacular way like this. Faraday, he says, has done it, so we know there's no physical effect. It appears, therefore, that the most sudden changes of potential produce no physical effects on matter, live or dead, provided these changes take place simultaneously on all the bodies in the field. Right, so that's obviously important. We want to do it all at once. If Faraday, instead of rising his cube to a high electric potential, had raised it to a high temperature, the result, as we know, would have been very different. So again, he's drawing on this broad analogy of temperature. Key idea seems to be here, for potentials to be more than a mere scientific concept, for them to be a real physical quantity, they would have to make a difference, they would have to produce a physical effect. But these complete changes, total changes of potential don't make such a difference, hence potentials are not real. That appears to be the argument. So you might think that wasn't what Maxwell was doing. He was basically saying potentials are mathematical surplus structure. And again, why? Because the simultaneous total changes produce no physical effects, only differences in potential make a difference to physical effects. And as a result, maybe the thought is we should only accept fields as physically real. They bring about physical effects, potentials do not. Now notice that Maxwell in this entire paragraph seems to equate observational differences with physical effects. It's a bit worrisome, but that seems to be what he's doing. Now here's the question though. Is this a good argument, or is this a good case for comparativism? Well, you might think yes, right? Because he's saying, look, these total changes to potential produce no physical effects. Let's get rid of them. So it seems he's adopting this kind of strategy, this kind of argumentative, no physical difference, let's get rid of it, a strategy of argument. You might think we can use the same thing for absolute values for lots of things, so that's great, with Maxwell on the side.
But is that an argument for comparativism? I thought that was just a statement, in fact, of comparativism.
Okay, so there's one question is that a compelling argument? I'll leave that to the side for the moment.
I mean, isn't it the case that I'm just thinking, maybe I'm just being simple-minded about it, but it seems to me he's assuming comparativism and then arguing that electric fields don't have physical significance in and of themselves.
I think actually that's the opposite.
Okay. What is the opposite? That's what I don't understand.
I think Maxwell actually assumes that anything that's just a different structure, anything that doesn't have absolute values that make a difference, is not real. Because he's actually saying potentials are not real. Why are they not real? Because their absolute values make no difference. Well, he doesn't conclude from that we should be comparativists about potentials. He actually concludes from that we should not even think that potentials are real.
Is there a difference between believing in the field and believing in the comparative values of the potential?
Apparently, yes, for Maxwell. I agree that it's weird.
I mean, in a sense, you've got these two bits of mathematical representation, right? One represents absolute values of potential, and the other one represents potential differences. And in a sense, if you believe that potential only has a comparative structure, that's the same as just believing in the field, which is what Maxwell's arguing for, right?
In a sense, but so if his conclusion were, I think it's a really puzzling argument actually. If his conclusion were, hence we should only believe that potential differences are real, I would agree with you. But his conclusion is potentials are not real. Potential is a mere scientific concept, is what he says. Right? So this idea that there are values of potentials, that's somehow something that we make up to get the mathematics right. But the fields, he wants to say, and he says at various points, no, but the fields are want to be understood literally. So he seems to think of those as sort of two competing candidates for physical quantities, and so only the fields are the real ones. Now you might think mathematically that's really strange, because the fields mathematically just hang together with the potential. So, but it's very puzzling, I think, to make sense of it, unless you sort of think of him as thinking the different physical quantities, one of which actually turns out not to be a physical quantity.
Or you think that the potential, that the mathematical structure represented by the potential is the surplus structure, and they're two sides of the same thing, and you're throwing out the absolutist structure and keeping the comparative structure. I don't know if you do that. I mean, I'm sure you didn't think about it that hard.
I mean, that's effectively how I interpret the passage anyway. Yeah.
So
it's hard for me to just see, maybe I was just too slow. It's hard for me to see the argument for comparativism that concludes comparativism. What is the assumption?
I think you have two different worries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's a different worry. I was thinking that comparativism about the quantity potential is the same thing as being a realist field.
Okay.
And there's just no space between those two. You have two options in electromagnetism. You either believe in an absolute structure, the potential, and the field supervenes on that structure, or you just believe there's one structure, the field, that expresses the same thing that we would express with a different structure and the potential.
Yeah.
And there isn't the space between that. You can't. There's no difference between a field realist and a comparativist about potential. That's not a.
I like that way of putting it, actually, and I will steal it for the paper version of this. Because I find it very, very hard to make sense. And whenever I try to explain it to people, I find it really hard to making sense of Maxwell here. Because he seems so committed to fields are real, potentials are not real. But if this is how you express it, it becomes difficult to see how you could express it in the way that you just did. Your worry, I think, is different. Your worry, which I share also, is the worry that you have to make an assumption about what you expect from a physical quantity in order for that argument to go through. And I agree with that worry as well, which I think is one of the reasons why this debate is actually relevant to those cases. But yeah, it's a bit strange, but perhaps Eleanor's point is actually, yes, Maxwell's very pro-comparativism. That's fine. That's okay. What seems to be the relevant notion of absolute in the background? Well, the question of meaningful 0 point seems to be one of them, right? Because it seems that if potential difference are the only thing that makes a difference, it doesn't matter what we put zero potential, that's just an artifact. And again, measurement theoretically, we can relate that back to the thing as I said earlier. Potentials, it seems pretty clear, are different structures. And different structures of a weak sort that only give rise to interval states. They don't give rise to ratio states. Okay. Now, one thing you notice here is that if you want to match this onto the A-fact, C-fact thing, you should weaken how you express your C-facts. Because strictly speaking, you should only say the difference in electric potential between X and Y is R. You should be very careful about expressing it as a ratio, lest you're suggesting that there is a meaningful 0 point. And that's it, if you wanted to adopt this. Now, of course, there's a worry. The worry is Maxwell might have been wrong. Maxwell might have been wrong because it seems we have an effect, in particular the magnetic version of this effect, of the Bohm effect, which suggests that potentials do make a difference to observation. This is a widely discussed case in the philosophy of physics. Basic thought is first described by Wolff and Bohm, and I think this version of it, I believe, is experimentally tested. You have a shielded solenoid here, and you have an electron that's passing through a double-slit setup. You have an observation here, and the interesting thing is when you turn on the solenoid, you see an interference pattern on the screen that you wouldn't expect. You wouldn't expect it initially because you would think if only fields make a difference and is truly shielded, then the electron should be passing it without noticing any field effects. However, the fact that you see the observation, the interference of the observation, suggests that there is something that affects the phase of the electron. What might that be? Suggestion, it's the magnetic vector potential outside the solenoid that produces a phase shift in the electron. That's not the only interpretation, but it's one interpretation. And the sort of interesting part of that interpretation for our purposes is that has suggested to a lot of people that we should treat the electromagnetic potential as perhaps a real quantity. Why? Because it seems to have a causal effect that we didn't expect initially, but that in this setup is revealed. Now that suggests that this is a case that's very good for the absolutist. Because the absolutist might say, look, you were wrong, Maxwell, to dismiss the potential on observational grounds. Because actually, if we just look hard enough, we can find a case where the potential makes a difference. And certainly some people read it that way. Now I think in light of what we discussed earlier, there's a question, it's just like good news or bad news of comparativism. It's mostly bad. It's bad because it really clearly shows why this kind of positivistic observational difference argument is a bad strategy. Right? Because you always have to factor in the possibility that actually you can create a setup in which it does make a difference. So that's bad. Moreover, it begins to look like absolute values of the potential might have to be regarded as real, but those are the things that the comparativists want to get rid of, so that's also problematic. I'm trying to find good things for the comparativists here. There are not very many. One is, you might say, okay, but maybe that shows that Maxwell was certainly wrong in having this prejudice against new different structures. That's, again, barring the idea that the field just is a different structure. So if that was the worry, this worry has here been also counted, just as the positivistic worry has been counted. The other good news is that this interpretation of the Wolff effect is controversial, and people do try to defend it as not showing that the potential is doing the effect, and trying to give various more or less elaborate alternative explanations. Again, for reasons that I think are driven largely by comparativist intuition, by the thought that no, we don't want absolute potential values. Okay. So that.
If you have a better explanation, you have a better explanation, you know.
I'm not driven by not liking absolutism. You just want to get the right amount of structure. And the potential has too much structure. And the field has too little, and you want to get the right amount. It doesn't matter whether it's an absolutist or a different structure, or you just want to get the right structure. Anyway.
Fair enough, but the too much. Think about where your too much structure intuition comes from. It seems to me it's a.
Oh, the too much structure comes from the fact that even in the Harrod-Bohm effect, you get the same phase shift with many different assignments of gauge to the potential.
Yeah.
So the holonomy interpretation is nice because you get, if you like holonomies, lots of ways to do it, but what you're looking for is something where the thing that you specify is one matched with the physical effects you're looking for. So it's not nothing about absolutism. There could be absolute values. It's just that you still got I was always thinking of this as an indeterminism on the determination argument. You don't want to postulate physics that has unnecessary underdetermination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think a lot of comparativists are driven by worries of that sort. So
sure, it's just I think the worry of. I think that's the starting point. It's not that I don't like absolute values and I want comparativism to start with. I want a physics with no unnecessary structure, surface structure, so that I can perform an inference to the best explanation with the most parsimonious explanation about. You can tell us if I take away. You can write. I'd like interrupted lots, but tell me to be quiet at any moment.
No, that's probably fine. And it's putting it up. Okay. Now, what exactly is a comparativist looking for? I think a comparativist is looking for an argument that tries to say that we can do physics using different structures only. So, if you like, differences are sufficient to count as a physical quantity. So you don't want an argument that presupposes, in a sense, that you need a kind of extensive structure. In the history of physics, a lot of people were very committed to the idea of extensive structures as sort of the basis for physical measurement. You also, of course, want to show that differences are sufficient to account for empirical differences. So if you get cases like the Harrod-Bohm effect, you're going to be worried about cases. You're going to be worried about the fact that differences might not be enough. More promising candidates, I think, initially are kinematic quantities, where I think, at least empirically, we're pretty happy with different structures. And I think that's one of the reasons why people have turned to sort of the Einstein-style arguments and have thought, maybe we can like run with those. I don't think it works, but that's at least what people have tried. Now, Dasgupta gives this really terrible appropriation of Einstein's argument. He's at the end of his paper, he's already argued a lot of metaphysics. I'll defend him on that. But it's bad because it's really straightforwardly positivistic, I think. He seems to think Einstein's argument relies on the idea that absolute simultaneity doesn't make an empirical difference, even in principle. So we're not so worried about future differences being revealed because in principle argument there makes no empirical difference. Absolute quantity values in general are on par with absolute simultaneity. They do not make an empirical difference even in principle. So by the same token, we should get rid of absolute quantity values and stick to comparativism. That seems to be Dasgupta's appropriation. It's bad for a number of reasons. One reason is it seems to be a sort of naive positivistic argument, no observational difference, hence you get rid of it.
But that is what Einstein says in the magnetic conductor experiment.
I think, I mean, this again, there's lots of exegetical debate about this, but I think we mischaracterize the argument. It mischaracterized in part because it seems weird to suggest that Newton thought there was an observational difference off the sort of easy, straightforward positivistic type. And again, a lot of people I read, perhaps because I read all these Kantians, seem to say, no, Einstein is not actually an empiricist. It's not actually fought for the sort of positivistic argument. He actually goes in for much more theoretical arguments. And we have theoretical grounds for thinking that this would be weird. Okay. That's an exegetical question. I tend to stick with that one, but we can argue about it. It's also a bad argument because it's very, very positivistic as stated, which do use on philosophical grounds, but also problematic in light of the previous case study. Right? So you really want to have to put a lot into the in principle no observable difference to make sure you rule out cases like the previous one. More importantly, though, I think it mischaracterizes the quantities involved. Because the initial argument is not just absolute simultaneity values, it's temporal order for spatially separated events that's rejected. And that would have seemed to be a perfectly comparativistically acceptable quantity. Right? They're so ordered, some of these interval structures. So if that's rejected, it seems that we're left with less after Einstein's initial argument than even the comparativists wanted to attribute to time. So that's sort of not a very good source, or that's not a very good way of making use, I think, of Einstein's argument. So let's look at the quantities we have before and after. So before we have velocity, which is unrestrictedly additive, we have spatial distance and temporal duration as distinct and independent quantities, and we have a temporal order and a simultaneity for spatially separated events. Right? So that's what we start at. At the end of it, we have velocity that is not unrestrictedly additive. We have spatial distance and temporal durations as no longer distinct and independent. We have this idea that temporal order for spatially separated events is not well defined. And we have a new invariant quantity, the space-time integral. So the question is that sort of new picture that we have better for the comparativist or worse? And I think it's overall better, but not for the sort of reasons. It's not because the argumentative strategy is the same. It's because you might think what Newtonian physics did is it attributed an absolutist structure to kinematic quantities, to spatial-temporal quantities in particular. Einstein arguments show, and again you can argue with this, that there are theoretical reasons for attributing merely comparative structure to kinematic quantities. For the case of space, I think it's pretty easy. In general, I think space looks pretty easy, dealt with on a different structure. Special relativity, of course, makes it easy to attribute whatever we do for space for time, because we no longer have this distinction. And in particular, the order of kinematic quantities is no longer invariant simplicity. Right? So we get sort of a more comparativist-friendly treatment of spatiotemporal quantities. And I think this is certainly true for the space-time interval because it's an interval. That's what we're looking for. Right? So we have the quantity that's supposed to be treated as the objective, intrinsic to space-time quantity as a different structure. And that's exactly what the comparativist is looking for. So I think this is with good reason that comparativists may look to special relativity and say, oh yeah, that's the sort of comparativist physics that we like. No.
Well, I mean, just from another perspective, special relativity is about an assignment of the Minkowski metric to every point in the manifold. You know, which is like at this point, you know, the value of every angle is this and that. You know, it sort of strikes me as very, very absolutist in that sense. I mean, you can write it like this, I guess. You know, but what does that represent? I mean, it's. I guess, yeah, but we can talk about discussion. I don't want to hold up the.
Well, as I said, I don't think those case studies are in fact conclusive. But
I mean, like, yeah, field theories in general just strike me as very, very. You're assigning a number or a vector or a tensor or something to a point.
Would not another example be, this is very broad parallels perhaps, be the absolutist and the relationist idea of space, Newtonian versus Leibnizian?
so I think there are some parallels in these discussions. And one reason I think why they're a bit different is that certainly in the comparativist absolutism debate, there seems, well, on the intrinsic versus relational properties branch of this debate, there seems to be a difference because it's most people would be willing to say that spatiotemporal quantities are relational in some sense, and then there would be an argument about, okay, do these relations somehow reside in space-time as an independent thing, or do they reside just as relations between objects?
Right.
I think that's one version of having that that sort of Leibnizian debate. Here, I think people aren't immediately at least worried about the sort of substantivalist versus relations among objects question. They're mostly worried about how much structure does it have in the first place. And there's a branch of the sort of relationist absolutist debate that also goes in that direction. I think those two are actually quite similar.
Right, okay.
So again, you might think, I can tell some of you don't, but you might think, okay, that's nice because what you end up with here as the objective quantity, the thing that you like, is a comparativist-friendly quantity. When you get rid of the sort of nasty absolutist-looking quantities. So that gives you, I think, a kind of reason for thinking that's a comparativist-friendly theory. Now here's something quite funny, I think, although maybe you disagree about this. In both of these cases, there seems to be a background assumption about what sorts of quantities we should take as real, only the invariant ones. But because potentials were not invariant in the relevant sense, because different assignments of potentials did not make a difference, the conclusion was the quantity is not real, which seems to suggest that well, depending on what you thought about this argument, seems to suggest that different structures in general should not be taken as real. In the case of kinematic quantities, the thought was, well, the absolutist structure, that's too much. That's not real. Only intervals are real. So, as a general point of comparison here, clearly when physicists or philosophers of physics have these arguments, they have an implicit standard for what they take to be relevant criteria for physical quantities. So the question is, do they take themselves to be absolutists in some sense, or do they take themselves to be comparativists in some sense? So here are some very, very tentative conclusions. Very, very tentative conclusions. The first is a thought about the argumentative strategies, either for comparativism or absolutism. First, just stay away from positivistic arguments. But look for physical quantities with a different structure, either as opposed to or perhaps in addition to extensive structure. If you can do that, you can do two things. Either you can try to show that physics can do with interval scales alone. If you thought, actually, we only have different structures and they just aren't strong enough to support anything beyond interval scales. Hartree Field seems to have a program like this. He is not, he is a comparativist of sorts. His main objective is nominalism, obviously. So I think his comparativism is a means towards his nominalism, but that seems to be what he's trying to do. Alternatively, you could show that what look like ratio scale representations have comparativism-friendly interpretations, by which I mean you can show how you can give rise to those ratio scales and interpret them as meaningful using only positive difference structures. Okay, so that would be your strategy if you like comparativism. If you like absolutism, you might say, first of all, stay away from arguments that dismiss quantities with a different structure as non-physical, but also look for quantities that require an extensive structure that cannot be recovered from a different structure. And once you find one, well, first of all, you have to show that physics cannot do with interval scales alone. Because if it can do with interval scales alone, you can just go with a different structure. You don't need extensive structures. But more importantly, if you've done that, show that some ratio scales have no comparativism-friendly interpretations. So in particular, show that they arise from additive extensive structures only, and that also might involve insisting that the only quantities that count as physically real are the ones that have the extensive structures. Why would you want to do that? Well, because that's the only way of ruling out that comparativism is true for some quantities. If you really want to be a hardcore absolutist, that's what you should do. Now, what are the prospects for these two views? Well, in both cases, I would say mixed. The comparativist suggests that they're quite okay in kinematic quantities, but was less clear they can do the same for dynamical quantities. The absolutist, on the other hand, I think does quite good on certain dynamical quantities, but is much less good as needed for all dynamical quantities, is that what I should say, and perhaps it's not suitable for kinematic quantities. So I think maybe you can get an argument out of the SR case that shows you that there's something really weird about absolutism. The outlook, well, you might think there's different things to do. If you try to defend comparativism for all physical quantities, that is, you would show that different structures are necessary and sufficient for all physical quantities. You could defend absolutism for all physical quantities. You would do the reverse for extensive structures. Or you could try to adopt a kind of mixed view. You might have been tempted by a mixed view all along. You might think some physical quantities are based on different structures, others on extensive structures. What's the big deal? The problem that I see with the mixed view is that in any of the case studies that you might try to appeal to, it seems a lot of both how you read them, whether you agree with the argument, hangs already on a particular preference for comparativism or absolutism, or some view of quantities in the background that you're using to argue for or against a particular interpretation. So when we're having an argument about SR, I think that's already presupposing some kind of view in the background. All right, that's over an hour.